Three spine-chilling desert horror tales revealed. Terrifying secrets of the cursed lands exposed. Jill gripped the steering wheel, knuckles whitening against the sun-baked leather. The Arizona sun beat down, relentless and oppressive as her small car roared down the deserted highway. She stole a glance at Tommy, a golden-haired sprite back there in the back seat, blissfully munching on chips as if they weren't cruising through a bone-dry nightmare. Flickering images of the past tugged at her heart, memories of when happiness seemed like a permanent fixture. Now, it was overshadowed by an invisible weight: grief. A summer road trip was supposed to create memories, not haunt them. As shadows began to stretch across the road, Jill squinted at a dilapidated sign coming into view. "Welcome to Dusty Hollow." It looked charming enough, like a postcard come to life. But charm quickly faded when they stepped inside the parched store, where the air turned thick and suffocating. Locals loomed like specters, their grins too wide, faces devoid of humanity. Their eyes were black holes that swallowed light, leaving an unsettling emptiness. "Where we all from?" one asked, his voice dripping sweetness like syrup, while others leaned closer, faces blocked by flickering shadows, questioning her about family and home in ways that felt invasive and wrong. "Let us hurry, Tommy," Jill whispered, urgency clawing at her gut. They stepped outside, the evening sun casting exaggerated shadows that lunged toward them, making her heart race. Just as she thought they'd escaped, the warm glow of the setting sun deepened, creating crawling fingers of dusk that seemed alive. At the motel that night, Jill was jolted awake by her phone chirping. Bleary-eyed, she squinted at the screen and froze Tommy's name. Somehow he was at home. "Mom, it's me. Something's wrong." His voice quivered like a whisper in the dark. She could hear fear etching into his words. "The shadows, they're moving in the house. And Mr. Wilson, he's not acting normal." Panic grasped her insides as the motel room felt like a prison. Outside, the desert was drowning in silence, a heavy blanket wrapped around her. Jill's breath hitched, heart pounding like a drum. She had to unravel this mystery. She ventured out into the night. Dusty Hollow was now eerily still, as if the town held its breath. Shadows rolled like dark tides around her, whispering secrets of an urban legend lurking behind the warm facade, the kind of story that sent shivers down spines, warning of a demon that fed on grief and loneliness. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. A sickening feeling knotted in her stomach as the locals, still grinning with their empty eyes, started to circle her, urging her to partake in their melancholic revelries. "You're one of us now," they seemed to chant in hushed tones, fear curling up her spine. Panic rose within her, a tidal wave threatening to drown her sanity. She fled, sprinting back to her car, but the night was alive, twisting with shadows that pulsed, ready to engulf her whole. She slammed the door, hands trembling as she glanced back, catching a glimpse of Mr. Wilson standing still in the moonlight, the grin widening into something primal, something unnatural. "You can't leave us, Jill. We need you." His voice scraped against her mind like sandpaper. Tommy was in danger. Just as she turned the key in the ignition, her phone buzzed again, another call from her son. Sweat poured down her forehead. The demonic whispers of Dusty Hollow clawed at her mind. What had she stumbled into? What was waiting for her at home? She hesitated, the weight of that call pulling her deeper into darkness. What could be lurking in the shadows back home? She braced herself. Jill's heart raced as the shadows around her seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The air crackled with electricity, a foreboding sensation that wrapped around her throat, squeezing tighter with every breath. She needed to make a decision. Go home and face whatever darkness awaited, or take a chance on the horrors of Dusty Hollow. With a growl of the engine, she peeled out of the parking lot. The tires kicked up stones, scattering them like frightened creatures. The headlights sliced through the inky blackness, but the deeper she drove into the desert night, the more it felt like the shadows were pursuing her, twisting and coiling around her, laughing in the wake of her fear. She tried to focus on Tommy's voice, the pure panic laced in his words cutting through the din of her thoughts. "Mom, please. You have to come home." Each plea was a dagger in her heart. Her fingers tightened around the wheel. She had to keep it together. Tears threatened to slip down her cheeks, but she fought them back. "I'm coming, baby. Hold on," she promised as she sped along the road. A strange fog began to drift over the pavement. Thick and oppressive, it slithered into the cracks of her mind, filling her with dread. It felt like the world was closing in. For a moment, she swore she heard whispers coming from it, soft voices calling her name, beckoning her to turn back. It was unreal, the landscape shifting, warping, as if it were mocking her resolve. When she hit a bump in the road, the car lurched. Suddenly, her headlights illuminated a figure standing poised at the roadside, a child with wild hair and imploring eyes, distressed and lost. It was Tommy, she was sure of it. "Mom," the child wailed, arms stretching out towards her. "No," Jill shouted, blinking rapidly to clear her vision. But the apparition danced before her, shimmering and shifting as if caught between worlds. The moment their eyes met, she recognized the familiar flash in his gaze. The fear she had just heard in his voice echoed back to her, louder than the screams of her own thoughts. Her pulse quickened. The road ahead twisted unnaturally. She swerved, heart hammering as the silhouette abruptly vanished into the dark, swallowed by the fog around her. Frantic thoughts spiraled in her mind. Was it a trick? A painting of her grief, carefully crafted by the demon feeding on her despair? The ghosts of Dusty Hollow wouldn't let her leave without paying a price, and the price might just be Tommy. The fog tightened its grip. The sound of laughter rang in her ears, chilling and ethereal. It felt like the town itself was alive, rejoicing in her torment, as if she were an unwitting participant in their cruel game. Cars sometimes passed, dim figures waving, grinning wide with those ghoulish smiles. Were they human? Or had she entered a world far removed from reality, where shadows reigned supreme? The road grew more uneven. Jill fought to stay in control. She couldn't let herself crash into the darkness. Tommy needed her. The thought of him in that house, with shadows stretching and dancing around him, sent a new wave of terror washing over her. Suddenly, the lights of the town flickered into view, a promised safety, but with it came the dreadful realization that something awaited her there. A tortured cry erupted from the depths of her mind, a sound so familiar, yet alien. It echoed the fears she shoved down, screamed against the walls of her heart. "Mom, help me." The words were sharp, slicing through the fog. The voice was unmistakably Tommy's. Desperation clawed at Jill as she flew toward Dusty Hollow, knowing she'd have to confront both the town's malevolent charm and the shadows that lurked in her memory. What if she wasn't strong enough? What if she fell victim to the very darkness she sought to destroy? Her grip on the wheel tightened as she barreled towards the heart of the nightmare. Would she pull Tommy from these clutches, or would they both become trapped in the web of Dusty Hollow's evil? As she drove into the dimming town lights, a foreboding sensation wrapped around her heart like chains. What awaited her at the very end of that road? She rolled into Dusty Hollow, the headlights of her car cutting through the swirling fog. Each pulse of light revealed something unsettling: houses standing like skeletons, their windows dark and lifeless. Wisps of shadow darted between the structures, echoing the fear that gnawed at Jill's insides. This wasn't just a town. It was a graveyard of memories. Jill's heart thumped loudly in her chest, drowning out the laughter that danced around her. Each chuckle was a dagger, digging into her sanity. "Get it together," she muttered, but her voice trembled. The car slowed as she reached a crossroads where the pavement cracked under the weight of time. One way led deeper into the town where the lights flickered with a sinister allure, and the other faded into a narrow path that climbed toward the hills. She gripped the wheel, torn. The path toward the hills seemed more inviting, yet the thought of turning her back on Tommy felt like abandoning him to whatever horror awaited us. If sensing her hesitation, the fog thickened, swirling like angry spirits. A sound broke the silence. The soft whimper of a child echoed from the old church just ahead. Jill's breath hitched. "Tommy," she cried, voice cracking under the weight of despair. She shot forward, drawn like a moth to a flame. The church loomed larger as she approached, the door standing ajar, creaking ominously in the wind. Shadows danced within, and as she stepped out of her car, the laughter faded, replaced by a chilling stillness. Cold sweat dripped down her back. The air felt alive, charged with something sinister. Mom, the voice slipped through the door, whispering, trembling. Her instincts screamed to keep moving, yet each syllable pulled her closer. She took a shaky step inside, the floorboards groaning underfoot. Dust motes floated in the air, illuminated by the thin beams of light sneaking through stained glass. Twisted faces staring down at her. "Tommy," she called, her voice wavering. Silence answered, unnerving in its weight. But she could feel that something lurked here, a presence that seemed to wrap around her, heavy and suffocating. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, something darted across the room. "Mom." It was a flash, barely there, but unmistakably Tommy. Panic surged through her, demanding action. "Tommy," she yelled again, desperation sharpening her voice as it ricocheted off the walls. The sinister chuckle echoed in the silence, oily and dark. Jill spun around. The laughter wasn't just in her head, it was coming from the shadows, pooling in the corners like liquid darkness. They slithered closer, reaching for her like skeletal fingers clawing at the edge of consciousness. "Come play with us," a whisper taunted from behind her. The air grew heavy, filled with the scent of burnt leaves and decay. Shadows flickered, revealing glimmers of distorted faces anguished, trapped in eternal torment. "Not Tommy," she breathed, her body recoiling from the predatory voices encircling her. She took one step back, then another. The flickering lights above swayed, casting their sharp beams onto the wild shadows. One step led to another as she stumbled back toward the door, but they were too quick, blocking her path. "You came for him. You can't leave without your price." Jill turned, ready to run, but a figure emerged from the shadows, a child. His hair wild, his clothes tattered, he looked up at her with frantic eyes. It was Tommy. "Mom, help me." Tears streamed down her face as she lunged forward, but the shadows surged, howling as they ensnared her feet. She felt their icy touch, pulling her into their depths, an abyss of despair. "No, let him go," she screamed. The darkness closed in, and Jill's scream echoed into the night, swallowed whole by the malevolent force surrounding her. She fought against the grip, her heart racing, knowing she had to break free. But as the shadows reached for her, she realized facing Dusty Hollow wasn't just about saving Tommy. It was about confronting her own fears, the very darkness she tried to forget. Would she succumb to the shadows, or could she fight her way out? As she clawed at the tendrils stifling her breath, a horrifying thought struck her. What if Dusty Hollow wanted her to embrace the darkness, to become one with the shadows, like everyone else? What choice would she make as the shadows closed in? The shadows swelled around Jill, pulsing like a living thing intent on swallowing her whole. She gasped, clawing furiously at the frigid, smoky tendrils that coiled around her wrists, unwilling to be a mere sacrifice to whatever terrible fate awaited her. The walls of the church seemed to pulse with a heartbeat, echoing her own frantic rhythm. "Tommy," she cried again, the name erupting from her throat like a desperate prayer. The tendrils trembled momentarily, retreating just enough for her to gain a breath. It was a brief reprieve, but one that only fueled her anger. Let him go? But the shadows tightened with hungry force. A cacophony of laughter enveloped her, bitterly mocking her cries, spinning through the air like razor-edged whispers. The distorted faces in the stained glass glared down, their features twisted in a grotesque mockery of joy. Suddenly, her gritty resolve was tested as the light from the flickering bulbs painted fleeting images on the walls. She saw what looked like children, eyes vacant and filled with despair. Were these the ones who had been taken? Stolen by the same force that now threatened to take her? "Mom." Tommy's voice broke through the chaos, a spark of innocence lost in a sea of darkness. Jill turned toward the sound, and there he was again, a flicker of hope trapped just beyond the spiraling shadows. But something felt terribly wrong. His eyes didn't reflect the warmth of recognition. Instead, they sparkled with the same eerie glimmer that the shadows wore, a mix of terror and something darker. "Help me," he cried again, but this time his voice teetered on the edge, almost melding with the whispers. The shadows quivered, and for a moment, she thought she saw him fading, drifting like smoke through the solid walls of the church. No. Panic flooded her veins, fueling a sudden surge of adrenaline. With all her strength, she shoved against the icy hold of the shadows, forcing them back momentarily. She knew she had to get to him, no matter the cost. As she lunged forward, the shadows recoiled, cringing as if they were alive, caught off guard. Jill sprinted toward Tommy's fading silhouette. Each step felt heavier, the air thickening around her. It stung her lungs, like inhaling the remnants of long-forgotten sorrows. "Mom, don't leave me." His cries grew desperate, each word like a dagger aiming straight for her heart. She stumbled closer, close enough to reach out, to grab him, to pull him into her embrace. The tendrils that snaked at her heels coiled tighter, dragging her down, but she couldn't stop. "Not now. Not for anything. Hold on," she shouted, her voice thick with emotion, as she finally grasped Tommy's outstretched hand. The icy grip of the shadows intensified, trying to pry them apart. As she felt the warmth of her son's hand in hers, a surge of hope ignited within her. "We can break this," she yelled, willing both of them to stand strong against the suffocating grip. But even as the darkness writhed in frustration, Jill felt a flicker of doubt creep in. Could the shadows be right? Was she truly strong enough to fight them? Did she even want to? The price they demanded whispered in the back of her mind, prickling at the edges of her courage. "Mom, they're stronger than you think." Tommy's face contorted in fear, and a single tear rolled down his cheek, merging with the shadows like a forgotten prayer. "No," Jill screamed, words laced with the determination that surged in her veins. "I want to let them take you." Suddenly, a blinding light burst forth from Tommy's grasp, illuminating the darkened corners of the church. It blinded the shadows and seized Jill's spirit. For a moment, clarity washed over her. The faces in the glass screamed and twisted, fading under the illuminating glow. But just as swiftly, the light flickered as the shadows retaliated. The air crackled, and Jill realized she was being pulled in two directions between love and terror. In this moment of chaos, she knew she had to choose. Would she plunge into the light at the risk of losing Tommy again, or would she surrender to the darkness? That promise to keep him safe, its terrible price still a mystery? As the church shook under the weight of her decision, her heart screamed for clarity, but all that greeted her was a deafening silence, pregnant with possibility. What would she choose in the end? Jill felt the shadows constricting around her like a vice, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Panic clawed at her throat, her mind racing. Tommy's grip remained strong, but fear laced his voice, and it made her second-guess everything. Would the light keep them safe, or was the darkness offering a deceptive promise of protection? "Tommy, we can do this," she shouted, trying to drown out the whispers that hissed in her ears. "Just hold on tight." With a surge of strength, she turned, dragging him toward the light. But the shadows shrieked, flinging icy tendrils into her path, pulling at her ankles like desperate hands. With each step, she felt the boundaries of hope fraying. What if they were right? What if leaving the comfort of darkness exposed them to something even worse? The air crackled, thick with dread. It squeezed the life from her chest. She could hear the laughter rising and falling like waves crashing against a shore, each swell taunting her resolve. A vision flared in front of her, a group of children, eyes hollow and filled with despair, their faces identical to Tommy's. Were those the ones she was meant to save? Their suffering weighed down like a shroud around her shoulders. "Mom, don't. It's not what you think." Tommy's voice, frantic and wavering, pulled her back into reality. She glanced down at him, and for a brief second, she saw the transformation. The flicker in his eyes, the reflections of the shadows swirling around him, the way the darkness seemed to reach for him like a long-lost friend. Her heart thudded heavily in her chest. "No, this isn't you. I want to let them take you." With that resolve, she dug in her heels, pulling him closer to the flickering light, every inch a battlefield. "Stay with me. We can fight these things together," Jill cried, her voice straining against the din. The shadows lunged, a palpable force snapping and biting at her. She felt the icy breath of their wrath, a shiver that pierced her entire being, leaving her trembling. Each tendril that brushed her skin carried whispers of fear, doubt, and despair. "Mom, they'll never let us go." Tommy's voice cracked, echoing through the chaos. But her anger flared, mingling with desperation, a last stand against the horror closing in around them. Jill tightened her hold, her focus narrowing. The flickering light surged as her fears clashed with her willpower. A pulse of energy flowed through her, igniting the darkness, causing it to hiss and writhe. For a moment, it looked as if the shadows were shrinking, flickering like a candle in the wind. But just as quickly, they lunged forward again, crashing against them with renewed fury. "Fight back," she gasped, voice shaking. "Fight together." Tommy's grip faltered, the shadows whispering sweet nothings, promises she couldn't quite hear. His face twisted with confusion, and she saw the doubt take hold, roots sinking deep, threatening to pull him away. "Listen to me," she yelled, adrenaline coursing through her. "You're stronger than this. We'll break free, we just have to believe." For an agonizing second, time stretched, and the clash of light and dark hung in a fragile balance. Then Jill sensed it, the warmth of Tommy's hand beginning to tug away from hers. The shadows fed on the moment, delighting in her hesitation. Would it all slip away because she couldn't hold on to her son, her only reason to fight? Desperation surged through her. "No, I refuse to lose you," she screamed, pulling fiercely. But the shadows wrapped even tighter, struggling for dominance. Time seemed to freeze, the light flickered, teetering at the edge of extinction. In that moment, Jill understood that the ultimate choice loomed ahead. Would she plunge into the depths of shadows to save her son, or shatter the darkness surrounding them, risking everything in the blinding light? With the church shuddering under the weight of their struggle, she screamed, "Tommy, I love you. I'll never stop fighting for you." But just then, the ground beneath her cracked open, revealing a swirling abyss that beckoned them both. Would they surrender to the darkness, or could they wrestle their way back to the light? The choice hung heavy in the air, and she could only hold on and pray. As the shadows reached out, hungry for their souls, she knew the next moment would decide everything. The abyss yawned wide, an insatiable mouth threatening to swallow them whole. Jill's heart raced, an urgent drumbeat of fear pushing her to the brink. "Hold on, Tommy. Don't let go," she yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. But she felt the fabric of their reality unraveling around them. Tommy's eyes flitted from the void to his mother, confusion rippling across his face. "Mom, it's pulling me." His voice was a mix of fear and desperation, but part of him seemed drawn to the darkness. "I don't know what to do." Jill felt the tendrils of shadow tightening, twisting around her legs, pulling her towards the gaping chasm. The cacophony of laughter and whispers crescendoed, reverberating through her bones. "It's lying to you, Tommy. Fight it," she urged, squeezing his hand as if her grip could drive away the darkness that hunted them. Every ounce of her energy channeled into pulling him back from whatever was calling to him from the depths. "We can't give in. We're stronger than this." But with each moment, she could feel Tommy slipping. The light flickered above them, flickering as if it too was apprehensive of what lay ahead. The shadows laughed louder, a rich and sickening sound that filled the church with malevolent mirth. They were thriving on her fear, her vulnerability. Suddenly, she saw the flicker in his eyes once again, a distant glimmer of the child she loved, swallowed by the weight of darkness. "Mom," Tommy's voice faltered, caught in between the urge to escape and the pull of the shadows. "Remember the stories," she shouted through waves of despair. "The heroes win. They fight back." She closed her eyes, envisioning all the moments she held dear, all the laughter they shared. She willed the memories to fill the void between them, to help him remember who he was. "You're my Tommy. We're together in this." Desperation boiled into a fierce determination. Jill knew the light was not just an escape, it was their only weapon. With a primal scream, she surged forward, fueled by love and hope. The shadows writhed, reacting violently to her defiance. The ground rumbled beneath them, a low growl echoing the struggle between light and dark. "No more," she bellowed, thrusting both hands toward the flickering glow above, urging it to blaze brighter. At that moment, an explosion of light erupted around them. The shadows shrieked, recoiling from the blinding radiance. Jill felt Tommy steady beside her, the tug-of-war between hope and despair shifting decidedly in their favor. But just as victory seemed within grasp, a chilling realization struck her. The shadows weren't merely retreating, they were gathering. The flickering light cast ominous shapes on the walls, revealing grotesque faces that loomed close, watching with malevolent intent. Faces she recognized, those lost to the darkness, trapped forever in this cursed realm. Mom Tommy's voice quivered next to her, terror tugging at the corners of his consciousness. The shadows were whispering lies again, feeding on his fear, trying to coax him back into their embrace. "Stay with me," Jill pleaded, her voice raw. "You are not alone. I need you." But the ground split open wider, threatening to consume them both. The shadows hissed, a thunderous sound resounding with their eerie laughter. It surged like a tide, ready to claim them, as the warmth of the light began to fade. "Tommy, focus on me," Jill cried, as the twitching shadows lunged forward once more, their screams mingling with the sound of the abyss that threatened to swallow them whole. Their entwined hands trembled in the air, and for one heart-stopping moment, Jill realized the truth. Even if they escaped, the darkness would always find a way back. What was that power that was promised to them in the dark? She felt the pull within, the tempting whispers starting to slip into her mind. As doubts began to weave through her thoughts, as the shadows surged, ready to reclaim their prize. Tomas faced his mother, the battle for his soul hanging in the balance. Would the light shine bright enough to push the darkness away, or would they both slip into endless night? The final stand approached, and Jill could only push forward, praying they weren't already lost. "Tommy." The desperation in Jill's voice cut through the thickening darkness like a knife. The shadows coiled tighter, wanting to pull him into their depths. The light above flickered, nearly extinguished, casting wild rays that seemed to mock their struggle. "Mom," a strangled cry escaped Tommy, the brightness in his eyes dimming. Jill felt the tremors in their hands as the shadows hissed, a deafening chorus swelling around them. "No, don't listen to them," she screamed, the heat of fear clawing at her throat. The laughter grew louder, wrapping around them like an icy embrace. "Remember the park, the swings, the ice cream." With every word, she drew from the joy of their memories. The way Tommy laughed, his bright smile lighting up her world. It was their last lifeline, a fragile thread holding them together against the encroaching void. "Mom, it hurts," Tommy shrieked, the fear saturating his voice. The shadows clawed at his mind, weaving through his thoughts with an insidious whisper. Jill felt her own resolve fracture. What if the darkness was right? What if they were never meant to escape? The doubt crept close, a worm gnawing at her courage. She shook her head violently, sending droplets of sweat flying in the air. "This is a battle we can win. With our love." But the ground beneath them cracked again, a fissure threatening to consume their very existence. The air was thick and clammy, electric with anguish and despair. Jill could see the shadows shifting, faces twisting into horrifying visages of those they had lost, friends, family, all reaching out with skeletal hands. "Join us," they chanted, words slithering like serpents, coiling around her heart. "Let go, no," she bellowed, a primal scream rising deep from her chest. With resolve igniting anew, she squeezed Tommy's hand, holding on like they were clinging to the edge of a cliff. "We refuse to let you take him." A blinding flash erupted as she thrust her arms toward the glowing light, urging it to expand and consume them. The shadows shrieked, recoiling in horror, but Jill could sense their resilience. They thrived on her fear, and that realization cut deeper than the darkness. "I love you," she shouted at Tommy, locking eyes with him, trying to ignite the spark of recognition. "You have the heart of a lion. You are so much more than this darkness." The abyss churned, dark eyes blinking into existence, angry and hungry for the child's spirit. Their laughter became a cacophony of despair, taunting her with every whispered lie. In that moment, Jill felt like she was standing at the edge of the world, the weight of everything she loved lingering in the balance. But then she saw the flicker of hope behind Tommy's eyes as he fought against the shadows tightening around him. "Mom, I can't hold on much longer." "Just a little longer, baby." Her fingers locked around his. "Fight with me. Remember the light." The shadows twisted, howling in rage at the burgeoning brilliance that threatened to engulf them. But Jill felt the warmth of that light amplify, casting a fierce glow against the encroaching darkness. The air around them shifted, charged with energy, flickering like an old television caught between channels. It was a moment suspended in time, the eerie quiet before the storm, and just when it seemed they might triumph, the ground beneath them heaved violently. The fissure widened so rapidly that Jill was thrown to the ground, her grip on Tommy slipping. His scream pierced her heart, echoing like a funeral bell. Mom. The temptation of the darkness thrummed in his voice, a chilling blend of fear and longing. She felt the shadows reaching for him, trying to cradle him back to their fold. Hold on, Jill cried, struggling to crawl toward him, her heart pounding like a drum. I'm coming. As the shadows surged forward, plunging into a frenzy, Jill felt her feet slipping further into the dark. But she couldn't give up. Not now. Not ever. The ground trembled, and in that moment, Jill understood it was a battle for not just survival, but for their very souls. And about to be lost was her son. Would she be able to reach him in time, or was the darkness eager to claim its prize? She gritted her teeth, fierce and unyielding, as the abyss reached out for her, the echo of Tommy's cries haunting the air. A secret lay deep within the shadows, one that could change everything. What price would she pay to discover it? Tommy. The word echoed, but the shadows swallowed it, devouring every ounce of hope in the ensuing silence. Jill's breath came in ragged gasps, her chest tightening as if the darkness itself were wrapping around her, squeezing the very life from her lungs. Desperation clawed at her mind. All she could see was the look of terror in Tommy's eyes, pulsing with the rhythm of the chaos around them. The ground quaked violently, sending shards of earth splintering into the air. She could feel it, the fractures reaching for them, hungry and insatiable. Mom, help me. Tommy cried again, his voice sharp as a dagger, piercing through the fog of despair. She could feel his grip slipping. Just a little more, she yelled, crawling desperately across the jagged ground, her palms raw against the grit. The light pulsed from above, flickering so wildly it barely seemed real. Jill's heart raced, a drumbeat of pure terror, as she struggled against the shadows that writhed like serpents, seeking to drag her back into the void. No, not my son, she screamed, the primal scream echoing from her core. Jill pushed through the agony, forcing herself onward. She caught glimpses of Tommy, the flickering shine of his spirit trying to break free amid the swirling darkness. Hold on to the swings, Tommy. Remember the swings. With every syllable, she channeled the warmth of every picnic, every laugh shared. She was the barrier against the engulfing shadows, standing firm and tall as long as that child needed her. The shadows recoiled like wounded animals, shrieking angry howls that reverberated against the encroaching chaos. They began to lose their grip, but their rage surged back like a wave, crashing over her, nearly drowning her in despair. Let go, you can join us, they hissed, voices echoing with promises of comfort and oblivion. Their words slipped past her resolve, weaving doubts into her mind. What if surrender was the only way to save Tommy? No, she screamed again, shoving the thoughts away. She felt her fingers brush against something solid, an iron bar from a broken swing set. With newfound strength, she gripped it tight, using it to pull herself closer to Tommy, who was still teetering on the edge of being consumed. Tommy, look at me, Jill shouted again, every fiber in her being pushing against the dark. You are not alone. You are my light. In that moment, Tommy's eyes sparkled for just a heartbeat. I'm scared, he cried, and it twisted knife deep in Jill's heart. I know, but we can fight. Her fingers tightened around the iron bar, yanking her whole body forward as she felt herself teeter again, and the abyss lurched, inviting her to join. Then the dark laughter swelled up once more, mocking her efforts. You can't win, they screeched. Yet she felt the flicker of defiance spark within her, a light that ignited her soul. I will not let you take him, Jill roared. With that, she swung the iron bar like a sledgehammer, connecting with the shadows that clawed at Tommy. For a moment, she felt the impact, the shadows recoiling as they shrieked in pain. Mom, don't stop, Tommy shouted, desperation flooding his voice. His eyes glowed with fear and something more. Something akin to belief, a glimmer of hope shining through. But the ground beneath her trembled again. Dark tendrils shot out towards her, latching onto her feet, pulling her closer to the gaping maw of the fissure. She could hear the mocking laughter of the shadows, insatiable and wild. Join us. Let go, they beckoned, sweetly, like an old friend. In that moment, Jill felt a sense of cold clarity. Maybe it wasn't just about Tommy. What if she could dare to understand the shadows? What secrets rested within their depths? Would knowing change their fate, or would it seal their doom? She hesitated only for a heartbeat. Every fiber of her being wanted to resist. But as she caught a glimpse of the angry glow of the abyss, she realized there was no time left. Either they escaped together, or they both fell into eternal darkness. With one last, determined scream, she lunged toward her son again, grasping for hope. Amidst the despair, "Hold on tight, Tommy," she shouted, as the darkness surged around them, threatening to close in. In that moment, their eyes met, and a silent understanding sparked between them. What would they have to sacrifice to uncover the truth hidden beneath the shadows? Time was slipping away, and as the world around them trembled, she knew the next choice would be the one that either shattered them or freed them forever. The shadows screamed, their howls intertwining with the cacophony of despair. Jill pulled her son toward her with every ounce of strength left in her, but the ground beneath them roared with a hunger that could not be quelled. The iron bar felt like a flimsy twig in her grasp. "Tommy, keep your eyes on me," she gasped, her heart racing against the darkness that threatened to collapse upon them both. The light above flickered feverishly, illuminating the fear sculpted on her son's face, a look that ripped through her like ice. With a sudden rush of air that felt like icy fingers on her skin, the dark tendrils wrapped tighter around her ankles, dragging her back toward the yawning chasm. "Mom!" Tommy shouted, his voice slicing through the chaos. Jill's pulse thudded loudly in her ears. She squeezed her eyes shut for a split second, trying to banish the visions of what might await them in that endless void. The shadows hissed, promising solace and surrender. "You will find peace, shut up," she spat back, the words exploding from her throat with a ferocity she didn't know she could wield. She could feel her courage slipping as fear clawed at her mind, unveiling dark memories, images of childhood fears, hidden monsters under the bed. Not now. She could still see the swings, their old wooden frame creaking with laughter. The memory anchored her as malevolent laughter echoed all around. "You want him? Then give us what we need." "What do you want?" she screamed, fury mingling with terror. "Your fear, your regrets." The shadows coiled tighter. "They keep us alive, Jill." The hair on the back of her neck stood up. It was a twisted game, yet she could feel the weight of their eyes on her, hungry, expectant. With every heartbeat, she could feel Tommy becoming more distant. More shadows encroached, snaking up her knees now. "I want to let you take him," she yelled, swinging the iron bar, connecting once more with a dark mass. A momentarily flicker of light punctured the gloom where the bar struck. But this time, she understood. The shadows were as enmeshed in fear as they were. They fed off it, drawing strength from the past. "Mom!" Tommy's voice rang, but it was tinged with something else now, a challenge. Did he sense her hesitation? Was he willing to join the dance of despair? "Tommy!" she gasped, searching for his eyes again. "Fight with me. It's too late," he cried, as his small fingers slipped away, releasing her grip. "Mom, they're all around me." A rush of wind battered against her face, and a wild fear gripped her heart. She twisted, trying to see him as shadows lunged. Panic exploded in her chest. In that split second, she realized she was losing him. The ground shook violently again, splinters of soil erupting around them, and desperation twisted in her gut. With a guttural roar, Jill slammed the iron bar down into the shadows, where she believed Tommy still hovered, grasping for air. "Give me back my son," she bellowed, feeling the vibrations travel through her bones. Then she felt the shadows pull back, recoiling like a wounded beast. Was it working? The darkness scattered, revealing brief glimpses of her son struggling against the tide. But it didn't last. A thunderous crack split the ground, and she stumbled, nearly losing her balance. "Mom!" His scream shot through the air, raw and unfiltered. A spark ignited in her, a primal urge to protect. Jill steadied herself, eyes fierce. She had to break through. "Let me see him. Show me." The laughter faded briefly, uncertainty whispering in the air. It wasn't just about fighting anymore. She had to embrace that fear. She tightened her grip, the bar now a talisman of her resolve. "I will face this." The shadows hesitated, gasping as though startled. Then, an insidious voice slid in. "What if it's not just fear that binds you, Jill?" A chill raced down her spine. What other truths lay buried in the darkness? But suddenly, an image sparked in her mind, sharp and clear of face. A haunting face from her past. The ground shook as the shadows pressed in once more, filling the air with a frenzy of howls. "Tommy!" she screamed, reaching out, feeling something shift within. Behind the chaos, what had she buried deep away? And then she knew. There was a lingering truth about her son, a truth she tucked under layers of fear and guilt. But before she could grasp it, the ground split again. "Mom, help!" Tommy's voice echoed, but the shadows pulsed. The game was beginning, and she realized the darkness wanted more than just fear, it wanted a revelation. "Will you give it to them?" "Willingly." As the abyss opened wider, time seemed to freeze. The shadows swelled, inviting her in, while she stood on the edge. And then, her heart pounding, she took a step toward the unknown. What revelations awaited beneath the cloak of darkness? Would she uncover the truth, or would it consume them both? The shadows writhed around Jill, laughing like a symphony of despair, but she felt a new resolve bubbling up inside her. "No," she screamed, the word a battle cry, echoing through the chaos. "I refuse to give in. We are stronger than this." With every ounce of strength left, she surged forward, pulling Tommy to her as the darkness roared, reaching for them. "Hold on," she yelled, anchoring him with her grip. The chill of the shadows clawed at her skin, trying to tear them apart, but the warmth of their bond pushed back, a beacon of hope amid the chaos. In a moment of clarity, she glimpsed beneath the surface of the cold void. "Listen to me, Tommy," she shouted above the cacophony. "Remember who you are? Remember the swings, the laughter, the sunshine. We're not just escaping this, we're fighting to exist." Tommy's eyes flickered with understanding, something deep within him awakening as the shadows shrieked, losing their grip on his spirit. I remember," he cried, strength rising within his voice. The bond they shared was powerful, filled with memories of joy, laughter, and love. With each word spoken, the tendrils of darkness quaked, their influence weakening. The ground beneath them trembled, fissures erupting as the battle raged. Jill could feel the light growing brighter above, fueled by her love and determination. "We can do this. Together," she cried, focusing all her energy on him, willing him to remember they belonged together, not to the shadows. The abyss snapped at their heels, roaring with frustration. "You think you can escape?" it bellowed, a voice that resonated with temptation. "Join us. Feel the peace and surrender." But Jill steeled herself, shaking her head defiantly. "We don't need your peace. We've fought too long for our joy." With renewed fervor, she swung the iron bar into the shadows once more, the connection igniting a brilliant flash that sent shockwaves through the darkness. "You want us?" she screamed. "You'll have to take us both." As the shadows writhed in agony, the ground beneath her quaked violently. "Mom!" Tommy yelled, his grip steady. "We're almost there." Together, they fought against the tendrils, pushing through the haze. She felt his determination fueling her own, filling her with resolve she never knew she had. Yet just as they pressed toward the oasis of light, the shadows retaliated, morphing into a swirling vortex around them, cackling with glee. "You cannot escape what you are, a cage of your own making." Suddenly, Jill understood a lifetime of fear, regrets, and guilt had woven their darkness around her. Embracing the truth was her way out. "You're wrong. I choose to live," she shouted, her voice fierce as it cut through the malevolent laughter. "No, don't listen." The shadows howled, but it was too late. Jill unleashed the memories of happiness, every cherished moment becoming a radiant weapon against the encroaching darkness. The shadows recoiled, faltering as they recoiled from the power of joy and love. "Tommy, remember the beach trip? You building that gigantic sandcastle?" she cried, leaning into the memory. "Or our surprise birthday party? We had cake, and we danced in the light." Jill felt the energy shift. The shadows began to falter. With one last surge, together they pushed through the darkness, their combined strength igniting the light above them. "I love you," Jill shouted in defiance, his name spilling out like a salvation hymn, illuminating the way between them. Tommy's face brightened, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth as his spirit began breaking free, in defiance against time and space. The chains of the abyss fell away, and with a final lunge into the brilliance, they broke free from its clutches, bursting into the sunlight. They tumbled out of the darkness, breathless and shaking, but whole that as daylight touched her skin. Jill looked down at Tommy, shining bright beneath the sun. Her heart soared, swelling with the relief of having him safe, perfect, whole. Dusty Hollow was just a memory, a small, fading shadow of the past. Tommy smiled, his eyes sparkling. "We did it," he exclaimed, pure joy radiating from him. They wrapped their arms around each other, laughter breaking through the veil of sorrow they once swam under. The world felt alive again, beautiful and filled with promise. "Let us go home," Jill said, pulling him into a tight embrace, her heart finally at peace. Dusty Hollow had tried to claim them, but love triumphed over the darkest shadows. As they drove away, the sun setting behind them, they carried with them the light of their shared strength, forever intertwined by love's unbreakable bond. And so they left the cursed lands behind, ready to embrace a future illuminated by hope. Hey, if you love this conclusion, you need to subscribe to the channel immediately so you don't miss out on any exclusive stories coming your way. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. Let us get the conversation going. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this thrilling conclusion. Let us spread the love.